My first contact with him was when I heard from an Amnesty worker who had been working with Terry Williams.
My cats.
That's nice.
For many years. Terry Williams, he's going to talk about Terry Williams, but there was a hearing that Yvonne and I went to. Hi, George. And we met him and heard about his experience with Terry Williams. So, and Yvonne and I thought we should really know a bit more about Terry Williams. You want to finish the introduction?
So he's an all-around good guy.
Good.
We got lots of connections here.
His title, I'm going to finish. His title is 32 Years on Death Row, the case of my son Terry Williams, 9-year-old to 50. If you want to say anything more about yourself, go ahead. You have about 40 minutes?
And
this is very informal.
surely.
We'll probably end it up.
I'm 74, and 4 years ago, in very good health, my mother went to sleep at 109. Whatever that means, I don't know. But in the
got good genes.
In the last 2 days, I was holding in my arms one of my dearest, most incredible sacred friends, a 90-year-old heart surgeon acupuncturist who has healed cancers, Alzheimer's, etc. And Dr. Villareal died in my arms yesterday. And the coming, the going, I'm very soon publishing a whole series of books about many of these subjects in a very, very sacred format. And I would invite you during tonight, whatever safety. I'm sorry, I know everybody's name but yours. I don't want to speak
George
that.
German.
Say?
George German, I've been here a member since 2001.
All right, thank you much, because I have everybody's name, but I hate to leave you out. Tell everybody your name.
Yvonne.
Yvonne, the best name. And in a sketchy, if you had a baseball card, Dan, did you ever collect cards as a kid? Still do. And tell us what's on the back of any baseball card when you first glance.
The statistics and everything, a brief bio of the player.
Your bio, something the guy did and all. And so if I had a baseball card, I grew up in Southwest Philly. I went to the largest Catholic school in the world, Most Blessed Sacrament, 56 in Chester, 4,200 kids, and they all looked like you two. They were all blonde hair, blue eyes, and we were the only Mexicans there, so we were a little unusual. And I would have gone to West Catholic High School, and I got a scholarship to St. Joe's Prep that I didn't take because I went away to be a priest. And I studied for 9 years, from 14 years of age, to be a Catholic priest, and then took the next path, which was some social work here in the city for the Archdiocese of Foster Care. And then I very reluctantly was drafted, and unfortunately, with great shame, during the Vietnam time, and some of us in this room unfortunately have lots of experience there. And I was an advanced infantry drill sergeant for a year, which is hard for me to imagine that I was ever involved in such a thing, but I was. And then I went to Germany and ran a community center for Army kids. I got married, had a daughter, lived in Europe during the Army time, and became a Latin teacher. 9 years of Latin in seminary, so that came in handy, and I taught 18,675 kids in Latin and loved every second of it. And I had a dual occupation. I'll throw these around. We have everybody. Oh, look who's here, Fran. Everybody, there's somebody famous here. Get ready. Tell them why you're famous. Fran Baird.
Well, thanks, Jim. I just had, I teach a poetry workshop in New England for the year, and 5 men just got published 10 poems in the Scoop Valley Journal. winter edition 2017. Thanks, Jim.
And I've heard Dan and his poetry program speak, and the poems are off the charts. And the dignified work that he is allowing these men to express their beauty and dignity is astounding. Later on, maybe we'll, during other times, if you'll say a little bit more about that work, all right? Pretty special. And so I taught Latin for 33 and a half years in many schools up in Mount Airy and Germantown. And I'm passing around some of I've been a psychotherapist, two full-time occupations. I've been a psychotherapist for 37 years, private practice, and I am a dream therapist with a very extensive training in an alternative dream method. Jungian and Freudian things, of course, you have to study those, but I studied the pre-literate dream work, the pre-literate people in Malaysia called Sonoy Indians, among the sanest humans who've ever lived, and that's an early base of my work with a great deal of Sufism. If you're not acquainted with that, that's mystical Islam and other deep things in my work. Probably, as I begin, I should ask you if you're comfortable, if you don't mind, an invitation. Anytime I invite you, please feel free to say no thanks. And I'd invite you, if you're comfortable, to take a quiet, deep breath in your own private way, whichever way is comfortable for you. And if you would, for the next whatever time that we're going to be here, allow yourself to be in a sacred space the way you know how to do for yourself. If you would do that for the next few seconds, and I'll do the same for myself. Thank you right off the bat for the sacred privilege of speaking to you in this special space and under the aegis that Ron has invited me, among a lot of people with a lot of compassion around the world are represented here. Your connection is to all the people in Amnesty. And I can tell you with some shame and embarrassment, but with some honesty, that I know what I'm speaking about. And if you take that in a deep way, you're going to understand why I'm beginning today's talk. It says 32 years on death row, my son, Terry Williams. People sometimes challenge me. They said, show me the adoption papers, show me the papers. And I say, oh yes, they're right here. They're right here. And they're very clear. Because someone who nurtures you, loves you, protects you, never gives up on you, becomes your breath, and you become their breath. That's a father. And my son and I have no separation. I'm in his room. I asked him for years, don't call it a cell. Use the term, it's my room, my sacred space. And my son is everywhere in my home. He's never without him, never. And if I were to tell you a story about the America's Cup race, you'd say, oh, great, we love racing. Tell us about the race, how it started, what they did. But I'd be not a good race teller, storyteller, if I didn't tell you how they made the boats, how the boats got made, or something about the ocean. And my son, Terry Williams, on death row for 32 and a half years. He's 50 and a half years old. In February, he'll be 51. My son's life did not start 32 and a half years ago. My son was on Weaver Street in Mount Airy. There was a section of Mount Airy, very sacred. The kids brag on it. They say, Mr. V, we're from the Way. And when they first told me that, I went, must be like Golden Arches and McDonald's, and you go down and there's music. The Way is the West Side Way. Germantown Avenue, the dividing line. The kids from the West Side are so proud of their neighborhood. It's like something out of West Side Story. But the East Side, the kids from my other schools, Emblem, and believe me, this goes on all the time. Not just in basketball where I coach, but it goes on like this also. 81 bullets fired on a Sunday morning, and they called me up on a Sunday morning to get over there as quick as I could. And I yelled, "Why, why?" And they held the phone to the window. I could hear the bullets. Weaver Street, Sharpnack Street, Burdan, a half-block street, Good Street. Imagine a street named Good Street where 81 bullets are flying. There's been 57 years of nonstop drug sales and every deep level of human suffering on those streets. And that's where my beloved son and my students grew up from, those streets. Some of you know sports, and you might know I have a number of adopted sons, a good number. And Bernard Hopkins, boxer, who's well known in our city. Since he's 9, he doesn't know any other father but me, and many, many others. My schizophrenic son called my house this afternoon while sitting next to me was Terry Williams' older brother. Tommy's 6 years older. And 5 months ago in 1 week, big, strong Tommy, he's muscularly handsome, great guy. He's older than you, no, almost. And that guy has just been told he's terminal, and it won't be long. And I drive him to all his appointments today also, etc. There's a strange thing in that Williams family, Terry Williams, Tommy Williams, when they were little kids, they did not know who their father was, but I did, because I was teaching children of that father in another school, but I didn't feel I had the right to tell them until they got older. Anybody in this room who has ever raised a child, could you raise your hand? Anybody who's ever raised a child? Is there anybody in this room? A lot of humor coming up. Get ready to laugh, everybody. Anybody in this room? Maybe Miranda. We got to talk about her name in a couple minutes. She's got the best name.
She does.
Anybody in this room? He didn't raise his hand. Anybody in this room who was never a child? Come on, Mr. V. We got pictures of you when you're real cute and little. But I never had a childhood, not even a drop of it, because my mother tried to abort me, as she did my sister before, by trying to kill a sister by throwing herself pregnant down many, many flights of stairs. And during my birth, I was way too big from a tiny mother. I was dying in the birth canal, and my mother was dying. And you say, well, that was when you were tiny. Both of my parents were pedophiles. My mother abused the boys, my father abused the girls, and both of my parents were very, very struggled human beings. They were homicidal. If you were reading a book, por favor, Diana, ¿habla español? Sí. Sí, como no. Nosotros vamos a hablar en español y ustedes no van a saber que... She and I are going to talk in Spanish.
No tan rápido.
Wow. She and I are going to talk in Spanish all about you in front of your backs.
Well, we can
Diana,
understand it.
if you read in a book that somebody is homicidal, what does that mean about the person?
Sure.
Megan?
They want to kill other people?
Yeah. And unfortunately, Dan, the word that is
Life-threatening.
life-threatening. And both of my parents, we had 7 children, they were homicidal to their own children all the time. They tried to kill us frequently growing up in violent and other ways. So when I say to you, I know what I'm talking about when I'm going to talk about some extremely, extremely delicate, sensitive subjects. Fran, if I may refer, how many years have you worked with prisons, any prisons? Total?
Total, 42 years.
Okay, now that's a long time to be working with men who are broken. In the California prison system, the largest prison system on earth, way bigger than any country in the world, they took a survey a number of years ago, 6 pages, no names allowed. You didn't have to take it. Do it if you want to, 6 pages. And the first question was, were you ever sexually harmed as a little kid? And if the topic that I am speaking about is uncomfortable in too deep a way for any persons in here in the room, I have to continue on the topic because it is essential to understand this case. But if it is too uncomfortable, I would very safely, with very good respect, ask you, don't stay in the room if it is too upsetting. And that's an important permission for anybody that's too uncomfortable. In that California prison system, huge thousands of men took it. And the first question on there was, yes or no, were you ever sexually harmed as a little child? Usually everybody waits and raises their hand. Sometimes that's fine. But everybody, when I say 3, if you're comfortable, shout out a percentage of people in that prison that signed on that question, yes, I was abused before I was 12. 10%, 8%, funny, 50,
80?
40. Everybody say a number.
90%,
60?
Say a number, anybody?
90,
Over 90.
90%.
And most people say, oh, 35, some
Oh,
say
no, all of
60. The answer is 95%.
There you go, 95.
And the person who did the survey said the other 5% were probably lying. So when we think of prison systems, 40 years working there, Dan, your career, right? Your career relating to prisons. Is anybody mind if I use street language? Is that okay?
Sure.
It's all right?
Yeah, use it.
All right. Those fucking prisons would be beautiful junior colleges and trade schools if nobody had harmed those little infants at your prison. And it's a man that you will get to meet because you go to Graterford. He was one of my students. I'm about, hopefully, to get him out pretty soon. And when I taught him in grade school, he was a difficult child, for sure. He was a great athlete, good ball player, but difficult. And when I see churned up children, there's no way I can even doubt that they have been hurt and damaged in serious ways because they have to act out. They have pain. They have first reactions to hit somebody in the mouth. And their PTSD is undeniable, even when they're in 4th and 5th grade. And of course, he's had a rough time 2 times in Graterford, this time 16 years. And I told him on the phone not too long ago, I'll change the name, I'll call him Steve. Steve, you know, I always had you and protected you in grade school, but none of the shit that you were doing and none of the stuff you did afterwards would have ever happened if what? If what? If what? None of it would have ever happened if what?
Wasn't abused.
If it was not abused, if somebody had taken that cute little, he's very handsome, if somebody had taken that cute little thing and done this, look, doesn't look too hard, and unconditional love to parents, safety, kids like that don't end up striking out, they don't end up in the judicial system. And I said to him, none of it would have ever happened to you if somebody had hugged you and loved you as a little boy and he couldn't speak. He lost his ability to speak. He couldn't even gasp. And finally he stuttered and said, Mr. V, I've been waiting my whole fucking life for somebody to tell me that. Is that profound? That's profound of all these men in their prisons. When Terry Williams was growing up on Weaver Street, I was just at his house when I dropped his brother off on the way here. His mother was a very, very challenged woman. They didn't call her mom. They called her, I'll change the name because I'll just say Denise Williams. That wasn't her last name either. But they called her by her first and last name, which wasn't their last name, their own mother. And if there were licenses issued to drive, she could never have gotten a license to be a parent, ever. Her middle daughter, real cute little girl, little delightful thing, but with a lot of challenge, Whatever a 3-year-old could do that was wrong must have been pretty serious, because the mother took the 3-year-old little girl, say Betty, and when Betty did whatever she did wrong, the mother duct taped the little girl to a chair. She boiled a huge pot of water and then took her daughter's legs over and over into the boiling water. And to this day, that adult woman has huge scars on her legs. Now, there's nothing to even surprise you, to hint to you of the horrific struggle that woman has had all through her life for many, many reasons to this present day. The reason I'm bringing up such things is if the America's Cup race is our topic, it would be so unfair to you if I did not tell you about the making of the boats in that life race of this and other young men. And it would also be unfair if I didn't tell you a lot about the ocean. And by the way, I happen to be a long-distance ocean swimmer for 43 years. You should not do what I do. I go out, even at 1 o'clock in the morning, half a mile, quarter of a mile out by myself, find a heavy lateral current, and just let go for an hour, hour and a half. And if the ocean has any calmness to it, I'm very buoyant. I can lay there and sleep sound asleep for half an hour on top of the sea, feeling much safer out there than I do right in this chair. And the reason I'm letting these things come out when we start is this. I should tell you that I'm not any kind of regular teacher or regular psychotherapist. My students know that when they got Mr. V as the 4th or 5th generation, one of my students was kissing me all over the face at the Eagles game the other day. He had not seen Mr. V in 51 years. He's 62, and I was his teacher, and he was crying when he saw me. And he remembers me jumping up on top of the desks in his room and throwing chalk and yelling things out. Yeah. So I'm not going to jump on the table here.
Please do.
But I'm going to pretend that this is a tree. All right, that's a tree. Okay, what about trees? Rittenhouse Square has a few nice ones. This is a tree. And the tree is Terry Williams. And you say, well, tell us about the tree. Tell us about the tree when it was a little tree. Tell us about the tree when it got a little bigger. I'm writing a series of books. My editor is in my house every day for 2 years now. So today we were talking this about the tree. You ever been around trees? Mm-hmm. You like the woods? Mm-hmm. You live in Jenkintown. By the way, Jenkintown has no houses. They have Indian huts, and it's all... So when a tree is this small and it's coming up, I just planted a mimosa on my front lawn. What's happening to the tree? Sue, what's happening to the young tree?
It's dying.
Could be dying, could be under such influences as the sapling tree is bent, so the child. And if Terry Williams is this one tree, it would be very blind and irresponsible of me to tell you that he's the only tree. There is a forest. 40% of young girls under 12 have been sexually abused. 40%. Boys, it's 32%, a horrific epidemic. And that's an average. Some communities have way higher than that. I'll say a name and I'm going to look at reactions on faces. Let me look around, see reactions while I'm looking at you. And I do love to look in the souls of everybody I meet. I see God's face wherever I look. Boy, he's handsome. Look at that. I'm in God. So I'm going to look in your faces when I say this name. Nassar. N-A-S-S-A-R. N-A-S-S-A-R. Dr. Nasser. Oh boy, did I just see a lot of reactions. For 21 years, Dr. Nasser did something. You know what he did? It was the #1 item on the news last night.
Sexually abused.
Sexually abused hundreds of little girls in the Olympics. hundreds of little girls in the Olympics. I don't care what sentence they just gave him.
150 years, 154 years.
All the prisons in the world, we all want revenge, revenge, revenge. How could he possibly? In my own family, abuse is generational. And that's more than I'm allowed to tell you at this present time. What we're getting at for a moment, you say, well, we came to hear about your son. My son is this tree, and there is a forest. I would often think of myself for a lot of years as standing under Niagara Falls. Anybody ever been to Niagara? Anybody? Mm-hmm. Yes. And I would think of myself standing under Niagara Falls like this, trying to catch all those broken children. Mr. Stevenson, how many total years you've been in the field? 30, 40?
37, yeah.
37, same as me in therapy. And can you barely even have enough hairs on your head to count all the young men and women? Can't. No, it's too many. And some of you said, somebody told me this the other day when I mentioned that, they said, oh, Mr. V, you're the catcher in the rye. Except you can't catch them all. You can't catch them all. No names because this is confidential, but there are 5 men right now in Philadelphia between 62 and 29, all of them facing mandatory long sentences for different stuff. Not one of them has spent a day in jail because I went in prison. I don't have any real suits, but I could borrow. And I go into court and I pretend I have a suit. I don't have any ties that I use, so I use something like this. And the judge goes, who are you? What are you doing in here? I said, well, Your Honor, I'm a psychotherapist, a court advocate, and the 23-year-old that you're giving a mandatory 18-year sentence to, he was my student. He had good marks. He's a terrific young father of a 3-year-old. He's a great dad, and he'll never see his daughter again for 18 years if you follow your guidelines. But if you give them to me, I'm Bernard Hopkins' adopted dad, which makes every judge open their eyes. You know Bernard, you protected Bernard. Yes, Bernard was with me recently for a whole day at the signing in of the new district attorney, and it was a wonderful day. Those things that a judge hears, where all they do all day, we know that from years in our courts, all they do all day, you many years, this many years, never see your family again, go in near Erie, Pennsylvania and do something. And the judge said, Mr. V, I will trust you. Instead of putting this kid in prison, I will give him to you for the next 9 years. He must report directly to you every night for 9 years.
Wow.
He's got to come to psychotherapy every once a week, and he's got to keep a journal of every single thing he does. I have to co-sign it, give it to the judge, instead of 18 years in prison. And there's 5 mandatory men have not spent a night in prison. And
Wow, that's great.
I don't
Which
know,
judge
Ann,
was this?
Say?
What was the name of the judge?
5 different judges.
Really?
5 different judges.
Question, are they rich white men?
Every single one of them I'm talking about are all black men. All black men. One of them's mixed race. All of them. And the judges are not all black or white either. They're mixed.
Yeah.
And Dan, though you could be a lawyer tomorrow if you wanted to, if you left this field, you could be a lawyer and make 4 times your salary, right?
At least.
At least. And were all those judges breaking the law and would go to prison for breaking the law?
The judge.
Get some law.
Yes. And one of the major teachers at Johns Hopkins Law School heard this story, and he said, Mr. V, those judges are applying the law the way it should be. And when I go into my son's case now, when Terry
We're at
Williams
the
was
Ethical
4
Society,
years old,
Philadelphia.
a student that
It's
I was
January
teaching in 8th grade at the time,
25th, 2018.
I taught at many schools every day. That 14-year-old